yeah, we really wanted to kind of chart the journey of and the resilience and the adaptability of the people who live in the Emirates, and obviously both in the last 50 years and beyond that. So it was really exciting to kind of learn of, even before the discovery of oil and obviously the transformation that happened in recent decades, how people lived there before, and how many of these traditions live on, be it the date farming in Al Ain, and the incredible kind of ingenuity and engineering that allows and has allowed Al Ain to exist for millennia. And if
So thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
It's great to talk to both of you. Okay, so congratulations on the documentary. I know that we're really excited to have it debut here at Expo 2020. Like it's a, obviously it's the perfect time to do it. Obviously that probably wasn't a mistake. It's, it's a wonderful time with 50 years to look back at, what the UAE has achieved. But okay, let's start at the beginning of this. Like, when did this project begin for each of you, and what was the impetus that led to its creation?
I mean, I can start from a channel point of view. Probably a couple of years now, almost. We started talking about doing. We have a franchise, a From Above franchise that we do at National Geographic, and then we were talking to our Middle East office about the opportunity of doing one in the region, and then exactly what you said earlier, the Jubilee and the Expo were all coming at the same time, and so it just seemed like the obvious time to make this film. So that's how it happened as far as this channel goes. And then we talked to Windfall Films and Johnny.
Yeah, so I think I started in January. It was when we first went into full production. And obviously there'd been a lot of conversations between Windfall and National Geographic in the commissioning process and throwing around ideas. And then, so I took it on January, and then I started researching, exactly what stories that we might be able to feature, and what the interesting, maybe surprising stories, rather than always just the headline ones of what people may already know about the Emirates. So, and then it was just a kind of, the problem was kind of such a wealth of stories. How do you then really choose what you're going to shine a light on and really kind of bring out to the fore, whilst also trying to kind of produce a film that really summarizes the country as it is and was and its journey over the last 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not easy. Like, I've been here for 12 years, and I've watched so many different stories that came, some from here, some from abroad, that try to encapsulate the story of the UAE, and it just always feels like something's missing, because obviously you can't get everything. No. But I do think that, looking at it, like, there's a reason that we have to keep trying, because I do think that there's so much, there's such a depth to the richness of that story. So what were some of the most unexpected aspects that you discovered about the UAE in starting that research and deciding that, okay, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to find something that maybe others really haven't, or have just scratched the surface of?
Should I go for this?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was, it was kind of looking back, because once we decided to, we really wanted to kind of chart the journey of and the resilience and the adaptability of the people who live in the Emirates, and obviously both in the last 50 years and beyond that. So it was really exciting to kind of learn of, even before the discovery of oil and obviously the transformation that happened in recent decades, how people lived there before, and how many of these traditions live on, be it the date farming in Al Ain, and the incredible kind of ingenuity and engineering that allows and has allowed Al Ain to exist for millennia, and obviously, when you look at the UAE away from the big cities that we see today, it's a challenging landscape, and yet people have lived there for so long, and the ways, through the pearling and the trades, that it feels like the Emirati people have always had this amazing ability to kind of, to make the best and the kind of positive spirit to adapt to whatever the landscape of the world allows them, be it farming the pearls, and then obviously as that had drifted away because of cultivated pearls, looking for what's next to bring prosperity to the region, which was just incredible.
Absolutely.
For me, the ancient history was a real eye-opener. I had no idea, and that people have been living in their region for thousands and thousands of years. So that was something I had no idea about, that the film really opened my eyes to.
Yeah, and I think the film does a great job of, I think, opening your eyes to the fact that those stories are there. But obviously, with 45 minutes, there's only so much story you can tell. So it's more just like, look, here are where the stories are. There's still so much left to tell. So, I really hope that people get a chance to dive into that, because each one of these like specific eras could be its own feature-length documentary or feature-length film. There's so much story, I think, there. So what was because obviously there's the other aspect of, when you're looking at people's perceptions of the country, a lot of that is based on the marketing of tourism, the industries that need to communicate their story, whereas a lot of what you're saying are the people that don't. They exist, they do their thing. There's no reason for them to put up billboards in other countries. They're just getting on with their lives. So what were can you tell me some of the people that you were able to connect with in those industries that maybe hadn't been used to having their story told, that really stuck with you?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say he hasn't had his story told, but actually his, so Ali, I think colloquially he's known as Major Ali, who's the pearl diver. And I think I think he said it's hundreds of years his family have been pearl diving, and so he's got this kind of traditional vessel, and he keeps the tradition alive today by, even though obviously there's no longer a market for the pearls as much. And it was a real privilege kind of talking to him. I mean, he's actually he's got lots of irons in the fire, and he's involved in marine conservation as well, in between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. But his passion for keeping that heritage alive, and that across the board, be it in Al Ain and in the way that because it's such an interesting place, isn't it? Because you've got technology that's driving innovation and almost defining the country for the future and adapting it again, which I think the Expo is a real great example of. But equally, what I really appreciated and shone through with people like Ali in the film is that they don't want to forget the past. The past is really important. And there was a quote from Sheikh Zayed talking about how if you don't understand your past, then you can't see your future. I might be misquoting that exact translation.
Yeah.
But I love don't quote me on that one. But I love that really kind of hit a note with me, because I think that's really good that you're kind of holding on even as you adapt to the modern world. That really shone through.
Absolutely. I mean, how has the From Above series, grown and changed since you started doing it? Because obviously, conceptually, there's a clear through line, but how do you feel that it's changed over time?
So we've had a number of From Above projects around from different regions. Johnny's been involved in the Europe From Above series that Windfall make for us very, very successfully. How has it evolved? I think we have gotten better at choosing the stories. I think we understand how to make the show sing more. I mean, some of the elements that make the show work is we normally have sort of around 9 stories in an hour, but then between each story we tell a greater story of the country. We try and get into the who are these people, what do they do, where do they work, how do they make money, what do they do for fun, and that sort of what we call interstitial interstory information, I think, has really blossomed to give a sort of a full picture, or as full as we can in the time we have, story of the country that we're looking at.
Absolutely. And is there how, like, in terms of the basic process of how the development goes, do you work with making sure that it's seen by people in the country? Is there like a feedback back and forth to make sure you really captured it right, or is this really like, okay, you go there and then you go and you make your own thing, and what it is what it is?
We worked with 2 executive producers from our office in Dubai, and they were crucial to giving us, sensitivities from the ground, because and we do that on all of our episodes. We show them to the local team and get notes so that we get things right, but that we don't misrepresent. We don't want to have just Windfall Films or the London view. We want to make sure that the local team also feel that it represents their country. Very important to us.
Can you think of any input that you got in order to, like, maybe an aspect of the UAE that the local eyes helped you dive into more deeply?
Well, I mean, this might not be a direct answer to your question, but one thing I thought was really interesting in terms of this film compared to perhaps some of the Europe from Above films is that obviously, given the demographic of the Emirates, is that 85%, if I remember rightly, of expats who live. So, and that in itself is kind of a wonderful mix of, produces this wonderful mix, because at its core, you've got this real sense of heritage and I think everyone, and I think my understanding is most people who come and live and make the Emirates home, they embrace the way of life there. They enjoy immersing in the history of the country, even though it's perhaps not their direct history, in their direct lineage. But in terms of then, it provided an interesting challenge as well with this film compared to others, because you almost want to represent that without ignoring obviously the longer history of the local Emirati people and people who lived before the founding of the Emirates. But in terms of contributors and the stories we told, obviously expats are now part of life, but they all buy into the kind of what the country is today and the defining of what the country is now and what it'll be in the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's another aspect, because when you just focus on one thing, it's like, okay, but there's so many different stories that helped come and make this place together. And it's that, I mean, I've always kind of described the UAE as kind of like the International Space Station of the Earth. Like, this is where the world really, I think, comes together in a way that no one else has ever seen.
When we design these shows, the sort of thinking is that, yes, you must talk about the things that the country's famous for. You must mention them in passing. But people already know those stories. So you don't need to do a whole story on, the Burj Khalifa again, because we've seen that film. So it's like, yes, mention the things we know, but then find new things, new unexpected stories to sort of really help tell a greater, and through those stories, you tell a greater story of the country.
Absolutely. Are there plans for future projects to be centered here and based here? Do you find that, yes, there are more stories to tell, but do you plan on telling them? Are there things in the works for the future?
I mean, we are always talking to our colleagues in region about other projects, and we're coming to the region next week. So for the premiere, so we'll be having lots of meetings. So there's nothing specifically that I can talk about today, but there's always talk about other things. We've been making projects in the Middle East for many years, so we'll continue to do so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Johnny, your time here, other than what you've mentioned, like, what were your favorite memories in the UAE?
Well, this is the slightly extraordinary thing, is that I have actually been to Dubai about a decade ago, but despite because of COVID times, and we did the majority of our filming in February, March, and April, I didn't come. So we worked very closely. So my first job was finding a local crew, a local drone crew. Obviously, it's largely drones, so it had to be filmed. And in the UAE, to fly drones, there's certain protocol. So we always were going to have to use a local drone crew, but usually I would be there on the ground directing them, which you'd think would be make it life easier. But actually, I think it was about double, because I was still kind of on call on the shoot days, but I just had to spend reams and reams of notes of what I was kind of wanting. And obviously, without being able to see the place and visit the sites before the filming or during the filming to adapt my directing notes, it was a bit challenging. So I'm actually looking forward to coming and seeing some of the places in person, although I feel like I know them quite well because I spent weeks researching them and then obviously seen all the footage from the entire shoots. So it's a slightly odd one for me because of obviously the COVID times, but it was still a wonderful experience, and I felt obviously I've learned so much in the process.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories like this recently. Like when I was speaking to the two leads from Pixar's Luca, the two of them had never met before they started doing interviews. And they're so amazing in that movie. But yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we just met like a week ago on Zoom. I've never met in person.
Wow.
That's COVID times. But yeah, I'm sure there's parts of the UAE that you know better than even I do at this point, especially having a
strange about our job is that you just zone in on one very kind of and then it's a little shame because even within it's hard to choose the stories that you are gonna and things that fall by the wayside and then you don't have time for, and then even within those stories there's things that you don't get to include because but hopefully it ends up with a richer kind of final piece in the process.
How much was left on the cutting room floor?
Well, I mean, I think we are fairly efficient with it. I mean, obviously you always overshoot. I mean, as Carolyn will tell you, it's there's also you can't, because we're trying to kind of produce a vignette that really summarizes a country. You can't spend too long in one place because it then begins to feel very specific and it's not doing its job of really. So you do need to move on. Within each story, there was a certain amount that obviously couldn't be told, but I don't think there's anything that we shot that there was nothing that we main stories that ended up on the cutting room floor. We just adapted them because they were all like as Carolyn said, picking the stories before we shoot is one of the key things that we do between Windfall Films and National Geographic to make sure that we're targeting and we're confident that what we're shooting is of value to the final article.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the beauty of the pre-production is there were probably many story ideas that ended up not ever getting shot because we narrowed it down beforehand. But the good thing about working with Windfall is we've got into a very good pattern on these films where we pick our 9 stories and then they all make the cut. So no story was cut out because the pre-production was so strong.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know it's just the final question because I know I've kept you guys for a while. So obviously, part of this series is allowing the world to discover the UAE, but what are you most looking forward to about, having people at Expo see the film, and what sort of feedback do you hope that you're able to get from people here from all across the world that have, made the UAE their home?
I mean, I think it's a wonderful place to premiere the film because it's sort of the culmination of so many things. So obviously Expo is in the project and the Expo project is in the film. And so to actually premiere it on a stage there is kind of perfect. They were still building Expo when we were filming it, and now it's open. And so yeah, it's very exciting to be able to premiere there.
Absolutely.
And for me, actually Carolyn mentioned it before, but for me, the best thing, I think the best feedback I guess from these films is when Carolyn first said during the editing process and when we were exchanging cuts, that it had made her want to visit the UAE, which I think is a positive thing. And actually different people involved in the process, final post editors, online editors, other people who were just seeing it for a day and doing the technical kind of finishing of the film, watched it and said, "Oh, I never knew of this. Now I want to visit," because they've only kind of seen perhaps what the advertisers want you to see. But obviously, our film hopefully scratched below the surface. And then in terms of people watching it in the Emirates who are already visiting, I hope that, like you said, there's surprising things. So maybe they've come to the Emirates and they think the Emirates is X, Y, and Z, but they're actually, from watching the film, they'll learn something new, and maybe they'll book another trip to some of the places featured, or explore some of the heritage a bit more deeply, thanks to watching the film. That's what I really hope will happen.
Yeah, on a personal level, I just hope that the next time my friends and family come here after seeing the documentary, I'm able to convince them to go somewhere other than the Dubai Mall. So hopefully it piques their interest. Yeah. I'm sure it will. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the film. Hope to meet you guys when you come to Dubai, and I can't wait for everyone to see the film.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.